Happiness depends more upon the internal frame of a person's own mind than on the externals in the world. George Washington. Let those words sink in, because maybe you've been chasing the wrong things. Maybe you've spent years believing that once your job improves, once the right person shows up, once life finally gets easier, then you'll feel peace. But what if happiness was never out there to begin with? We live in a world that constantly whispers, buy this, fix that, become more, then you'll be happy. And yet, despite all the noise, many of us still feel empty. Not because we lack comfort, but because we lack internal clarity. What George Washington said isn't just old wisdom from a distant era. It's a quiet truth, a compass for anyone feeling lost in the middle of a noisy life. What's shaping your inner world today? Because that might be the real reason why joy feels out of reach. Today's video isn't about motivational fluff. It's about realignment. Let's talk about what this quote truly means, not just in words, but in how it can heal your daily life. George Washington wasn't a philosopher by profession. He was a leader, a man who carried the weight of an entire nation's hopes on his shoulders. And still, he understood something that many of us miss in our busy, distracted lives. That real happiness isn't something we find, it's something we build. Let's break it down. Happiness depends more upon the internal frame of a person's own mind. Your internal frame is like the lens you see the world through. Two people can walk the same path, face the same struggles, and yet one grows bitter, the other grows wiser. Why? Because of the story they tell themselves about what's happening. Now, think about how often your peace has been stolen, not by actual events, but by your interpretation of those events. You get a message left on read, and suddenly your mind says, they're ignoring me. I'm not important. You get passed up for a promotion, and your mind says, I'm a failure. Nothing ever works for me. But what if your mind, your internal frame, is lying to you? And here's the second part of the quote. Then on the externals in the world, we live believing that if we just had a little more money, more love, more respect, we'd be okay. But externals are fragile. They change, they disappear, they disappoint. The truth? You can lose everything. But if your inner world is grounded, you don't collapse. You bend, you breathe, you move forward with dignity. That's the power of an inner frame. It's not about toxic positivity. It's not about pretending things are fine when they're not. It's about learning to choose the meaning you give to your experiences. And that changes everything. So how do you actually live this wisdom? Because let's be honest, it's easy to talk about changing your mindset when life is calm. But what about when you're exhausted from trying? When you've lost someone you love? When your dreams fall apart and you're left staring at a version of life you never asked for? Here's where this teaching becomes powerful. 1. Start noticing your default narrative. Every time something hard happens, pause and ask, what am I telling myself about this? You'd be surprised how cruel we are to ourselves. Instead of compassion, we offer criticism. Instead of patience, we demand perfection. Your mind might say, I'm too old to start over. Everyone else is ahead of me. I'll never be enough. But those aren't facts. They're habits of thought, and you can break them. 2. Reframe the moment, not the truth. This isn't about lying to yourself. It's about choosing a lens that brings clarity instead of pain. Instead of, I failed, try, I'm learning and failure is part of growth. Instead of, they don't care about me, try, I don't know their story, and I won't create one that hurts me. That small shift, it changes your emotional state, your energy, even your decisions. 3. Practice stillness, even for 3 minutes a day. Take just a few minutes each day to sit with yourself. No phone, no distractions. Ask yourself, what am I feeling? What am I believing right now? Is this thought helping or hurting me? This isn't spiritual fluff, it's emotional hygiene. And like brushing your teeth, it works when done consistently, not perfectly. 4. Choose what you feed your mind. If happiness comes from within, then be deliberate about what you let in. Negative news, 24/7. Toxic social media, endless comparison. You're programming your mind every day, whether you realize it or not. Protect your peace like your life depends on it, because in many ways, it does. Her name was Julia, 46 years old, 2 grown children, a long marriage, a decent job. From the outside, stable, normal, maybe even successful, but inside, she was crumbling. It started slowly, a silence that grew between her and her husband, a job that felt more like a cage than a calling, and a deep, unspoken fear that maybe this was it, that life had already peaked, and what remained was just routine and quiet disappointment. She tried to fix things on the outside, a new haircut, a weekend getaway, online courses to rediscover passion, but nothing changed. Until one morning, after a sleepless night, Julia sat at her kitchen table and whispered to herself, I don't recognize me anymore. That moment, quiet, painful, honest, was the turning point. Not because something magical happened, but because she stopped running from her inner world and started listening to it. She began journaling, not to be poetic, but to survive. She wrote down her thoughts every morning. At first they were angry, bitter, confused, but over time, they softened. Patterns emerged, wounds were seen, and most importantly, she stopped blaming the world and started taking responsibility for the way she interpreted it. It wasn't easy. Therapy followed. Tough conversations happened. She changed how she spoke to herself. She restructured her days, not for productivity, but for peace. Julia didn't become a different person. She simply returned to the part of her that had been buried under years of noise, expectation, and fear. And for the first time in decades, she felt free, not because her life was perfect, but because her mind had changed how it experienced life. What if the peace you're searching for isn't somewhere out there, but right where you are, inside your own mind? What if happiness has less to do with what happens to you, and everything to do with how you frame what happens? We spend so much of life trying to control the uncontrollable. We chase people, outcomes, validation, applause. And when it all slips through our fingers, as it always does, we're left wondering if we ever had control at all. But here's the truth no one told us when we were younger. The real work is inner work. Not easy, not glamorous, but sacred. It's in the way you speak to yourself when no one's listening. It's in the way you choose to stay soft in a hard world. It's in the way you pick up your own heart again and again and decide, this is not the end of me. George Washington's words weren't just a reflection of his time. They're a warning, that unless we reclaim the frame through which we see life, we'll forever be at the mercy of everything that happens to us. So today, choose differently, not because you have to, but because you finally can. If something in today's message spoke to you, if you saw a part of yourself in Julia's story, or in these quiet truths, then don't let it fade. Leave a comment below, not for the algorithm, but for you. Write one thing you want to start reframing in your life. That one thought, one belief, or one old narrative that you're ready to let go of. You never know who might read your words and find the strength to begin their own healing too. And if you want to keep walking this path, gently, honestly, and without pressure, subscribe to this channel. We're building something here that isn't about noise. It's about returning home to yourself. And if someone you love is struggling right now, send them this video. You might just be the voice of peace they didn't know they needed. Take a deep breath and remember, you are not broken. You are becoming.